Dust devils danced across the dry plains of Harmony Ranch, mirroring the loneliness swirling in Jed Strong's heart. He was a good man, a hard worker, and richer than most folks for 100 miles. But the sprawling acres and bulging bank account couldn't fill the emptiness in his life. Jed wanted a partner, someone to share sunsets with, to build a family with. He wasn't getting any younger. The town's socials offered little hope. Most women were after his money, plain and simple. So, Jed, against his better judgment, turned to a mail-order bride service. He requested someone docile, someone agreeable, someone who wouldn't challenge his way of life. He wanted a wife, not a war. Little did Jed know, the photograph he'd chosen from the catalog was a lie. The sweet smile hid a deadly secret, a past forged in shadows. The woman coming to Harmony Ranch wasn't looking for love. She was looking for a payday. And Jed was her target. Across the country, in a stark, windowless room, Ava sharpened her knives. Each movement was precise, honed by years of training. She wasn't born an assassin. She was made into one. Taken as a child, molded into a weapon. Emotions were weaknesses, attachments were liabilities. Her real name was lost to time. Now, she was just a tool for the agency, a shadowy organization that dealt in secrets and death. They were the ones who had presented her with Jedediah Strong's file. A simple job, they said. Infiltrate, eliminate, extract. The usual. The agency had provided her with a new identity, a carefully crafted backstory, and those deceptively sweet photographs. Be the woman he expects, her handler had instructed. Play the part. Get the deed. Disappear. Easy enough. Ava had played many parts before, but something about this assignment felt different. Maybe it was the vastness of the ranch, or the quiet desperation in Jed's eyes from the file. Whatever it was, a tiny seed of doubt had been planted. The stagecoach rattled to a halt in front of Harmony Ranch. Ava stepped down, clutching a small, worn suitcase. She wore a simple blue dress and a demure smile, the picture of innocence. Jed stood on the porch, his eyes widening as he took her in. She was even more beautiful than her photograph. "Welcome to Harmony Ranch, miss." "Ava," Jed said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Thank you, Mr. Strong," Ava replied, her voice soft and sweet. "It's lovely to finally be here." As Jed took her suitcase, Ava scanned the surroundings. The ranch was isolated, surrounded by miles of open land. Perfect for her mission. She noted the layout of the house, the location of the barn, the blind spots in Jed's security. Years of training made it second nature. Inside the house, Ava acted shy and overwhelmed, just as she'd been instructed. She complimented the simple furnishings and the view from the window. Jed beamed, clearly pleased with her reaction. The game had begun. Over the next few days, Ava settled into a routine. She woke early, helped with chores, and prepared meals. She asked Jed about his life, his dreams, his land. She listened intently, absorbing every detail. It was all part of the plan, to gain his trust, to learn his weaknesses, to find a perfect opportunity. Jed, in turn, was completely smitten. He couldn't believe his luck. Ava was everything he'd hoped for and more. She was kind, gentle, and genuinely interested in him and his ranch. He found himself opening up to her, sharing stories he hadn't told anyone in years. One evening, while they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Ava casually inquired about the deed to the ranch. "It must be a great responsibility, owning so much land," she said softly. "Where do you keep the important papers?" Jed chuckled. "Locked away safe, where no one can get to them," he replied, a little too easily. Ava filed that information away. The hunt was on. One afternoon, while mending a fence together, Jed shared a story about rescuing a stray dog. He'd nursed it back to health, and the dog had become his loyal companion for many years. Ava watched him, the sun highlighting the lines etched around his eyes, lines that spoke of hard work and genuine kindness. Later that week, a storm rolled in, threatening the newly planted crops. Jed worked tirelessly through the night, trying to divert the floodwaters. Ava, despite his protests, joined him, her initial reluctance quickly fading as she saw the determination in his eyes. They worked side by side, soaked to the bone, battling the storm. As the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, they stood together, exhausted but victorious. Jed turned to Ava, his face etched with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice hoarse. "I couldn't have done it without you." In that moment, Ava saw something in Jed's eyes that she hadn't expected, pure, unadulterated appreciation. It wasn't lust or even affection, but something deeper, and it stirred something within her that she thought had long been dead. The weight of her mission pressed down on Ava. She knew what she had to do, but the thought of harming Jed now felt wrong. She found herself avoiding opportunities to strike, making excuses for delays. The easy shots she'd identified in the beginning now seemed impossible. Sleepless nights were spent wrestling with her conscience. The agency's training screamed at her to complete the mission, to remain detached, to remember who she was. But another voice, a quieter one, whispered of a different path, a life beyond the shadows. She started having nightmares, flashes of her past, mixed with images of Jed lying lifeless on the dusty ground. Each morning, she woke with a renewed sense of guilt and a growing determination to find another way out. One afternoon, while cleaning her knives, she hesitated. The cold steel felt alien in her hand. Could she really use these on Jed? The answer for the first time wasn't so clear. She gripped the knife tighter, her knuckles white. The struggle within her was reaching a boiling point. One evening, after a long day of work, Jed and Ava sat on the porch, the silence broken only by the chirping of crickets. Jed reached out and gently took Ava's hand. His touch was warm and calloused, but surprisingly gentle. "Ava," he said softly, his eyes searching hers. "I know we haven't known each other long, but I feel like I've known you my whole life. You brought so much joy to this old ranch." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I'm not a man of many words, but what I'm trying to say is, I'm falling for you, Ava." Ava's heart skipped a beat. She looked into Jed's eyes and saw nothing but honesty and affection. For the first time in her life, she felt a genuine connection with someone. It wasn't a calculated move or a carefully crafted performance. It was real. Tears welled up in her eyes. She squeezed his hand, unable to speak. In that moment, all her training, all her conditioning seemed to melt away. She was no longer an assassin. She was just Ava, a woman falling in love. Back in the stark, windowless room, Ava's handler, a cold and calculating woman named Ms. Thorne, watched the surveillance footage with growing suspicion. Ava's reports were vague, her progress non-existent. The mission should have been completed weeks ago. Her vitals are elevated, a technician noted, pointing to a monitor displaying Ava's heart rate. Emotional response detected. Ms. Thorne frowned. Emotions are a luxury she can't afford. She picked up a secure phone and dialed a number. "Agent 47, report." A voice crackled on the other end. "Mission progressing as planned. Target has been compromised. Awaiting further instructions." Ms. Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Stand by. I'm sending a reminder. Agent 47, you are to observe. If Agent 47 does not eliminate the target within 48 hours, you are authorized to take over and complete the mission." "Understood." "Understood," Agent 47 replied, his voice devoid of emotion. The agency was losing patience. Ava's time was running out. The honeymoon was over. That night, as Ava lay in bed, a pre-programmed message appeared on her seemingly ordinary bedside clock. It was a coded warning from the agency. "Efficiency is paramount. Deviation unacceptable. Remember your purpose." The words burned into her mind. She knew what they meant. The agency was watching, and they were growing impatient. She had 48 hours to complete her mission or face the consequences. Ava closed her eyes, a tear escaping down her cheek. She was trapped between two worlds, two lives. One was a life of violence and obedience, the only life she had ever known. The other was a life of love and freedom, a life she had only just begun to imagine. She knew she had to make a choice, and that choice would determine not only her own fate, but Jed's as well. The clock was ticking. Agent 47 was coming. The pressure was on. What was she going to do? The next day, Jed, sensing Ava's distress, tried to cheer her up. He took her on a picnic to a secluded meadow filled with wildflowers. He told her stories about his childhood, his dreams for the future, his vision for Harmony Ranch. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Jed took Ava's hand. "Marry me, Ava," he said, his voice filled with love. "Be my wife, my partner, my everything." Ava's heart swelled with emotion. She looked into Jed's eyes and saw a future she had never dared to imagine, a future filled with love, laughter, and happiness. She knew what she had to do. "Yes, Jed," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." They embraced, their love a beacon in the gathering darkness. In that moment, Ava knew she couldn't go through with her mission. She had to protect Jed, even if it meant betraying the agency and sacrificing everything she had ever known. She was ready to choose love over duty, freedom over obedience. Her decision was made. Ava knew she couldn't delay any longer. She had to warn Jed. That night, after Jed had fallen asleep, Ava crept out of bed. She retrieved a hidden lockbox from under the floorboards. Inside was a burner phone, her only lifeline to the outside world, a lifeline she was about to cut. She dialed a number and waited, her heart pounding in her chest. Miss Thorne answered on the second ring. Agent 47, reporting, Ava said, her voice cold and professional. "Your report is overdue," Miss Thorne replied, her voice laced with impatience. "Status: mission compromised," Ava stated, her voice unwavering. "Target is no longer a viable threat. I am terminating the contract." There was a long pause. "You are making a mistake, Agent 47. A grave mistake." "I am making a choice," Ava corrected. "I'm choosing a new life." Miss Thorne hung up without another word. Ava knew what that meant. She was now a target. She had betrayed the agency, and they would stop at nothing to silence her. But she was ready. She would protect Jed, no matter the cost. Her loyalty now belonged to him. Miss Thorne didn't waste any time. Agent 47 was already en route to Harmony Ranch. He was the agency's most ruthless operative, a ghost in the shadows, a master of disguise and deception. He wouldn't hesitate to eliminate Ava, Jed, and anyone else who stood in his way. He arrived under the guise of a friendly neighbor, offering help with some supposed fence repairs. Jed, ever trusting, welcomed him with open arms. Ava, however, saw through his charade instantly. She recognized the cold, calculating glint in his eyes, the subtle movements that betrayed his training. She knew she had to act fast. She couldn't risk Jed's safety. While Jed and Agent 47 were inspecting the fence line, Ava slipped into the barn. She retrieved her hidden weapons cache, a collection of knives, pistols, and other deadly tools she had managed to smuggle onto the ranch. The game had changed. It was no longer about assassination. It was about survival, and Ava was ready to fight. Agent 47 was about to learn that betraying the agency came with a price. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Ava knew she couldn't keep the truth from Jed any longer. She had to tell him everything. She took a deep breath and began. "Jed," she said, her voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you. Something about who I really am." She recounted her past, her training with the agency, her mission to assassinate him and steal his land. She told him about the coded message, Agent 47's arrival, and the danger they were both in. Jed listened in stunned silence, his face pale. When she finished, he stared at her, his eyes filled with disbelief and hurt. "I know it's a lot to take in," Ava said, tears streaming down her face. "I understand if you can't forgive me, but please believe me when I say that I've changed. I love you, Jed, and I'll do anything to protect you." The silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Jed had a choice to make: trust the woman he loved or believe the horrifying truth she had just revealed. His future depended on it. Jed stood up, his chair scraping against the wooden floor. He walked over to the window, staring out into the darkness. Ava held her breath, fearing the worst. Finally, he turned back to her, his face unreadable. "I'm not going to pretend I'm not hurt, Ava," he said, his voice low and rough. "It's a lot to take in, more than I ever thought possible." He paused, taking a deep breath. "But I've seen the way you look at me, the way you've been working alongside me these past few weeks. I've seen the kindness in your heart, the strength in your hands." He walked over to her, cupping her face in his hands. "I believe you, Ava. I believe you've changed, and I believe you love me." He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "We'll face this together," he whispered. "We'll protect this ranch, and we'll build a life together, no matter what the agency throws at us." Ava clung to him, relief washing over her. She had told him the truth, and he believed her. Now, they were a team, ready to face whatever came their way. Their love was their shield, their bond their strength. The storm broke just after midnight. Not a storm of rain, but a storm of bullets. Agent 47, abandoning his friendly facade, launched his attack. He cut the power lines, plunging the ranch into darkness, and then opened fire on the house. Ava and Jed scrambled for cover, their hearts pounding. Ava grabbed her weapons, her training kicking in despite her fear. "Stay behind me," she ordered Jed, her voice calm and focused. "I'll protect you." They moved through the house like shadows, Ava using her knowledge of the layout to their advantage. Agent 47 was skilled, but Ava was more skilled. She knew his tactics, his weaknesses, his every move. After all, she had been trained by the same people. The battle raged on, bullets flying, glass shattering, the air thick with smoke and gunpowder. Harmony Ranch, once a symbol of peace and tranquility, had become a war zone, and Ava was ready to fight to defend the man she loved. It was a fight for survival, a fight for freedom, a fight for their future. The agency had made a grave mistake by underestimating Ava. Now, they were about to pay the price. The fight spilled out of the house and into the barn. Jed, despite his lack of training, proved to be surprisingly resourceful. He used his knowledge of the ranch to create traps and diversions, giving Ava the opening she needed. At one point, Agent 47 cornered Jed, a knife glinting in the moonlight. Ava, seeing the danger, threw herself in front of Jed, taking the blow. The knife pierced her side, but she barely flinched. With a roar of fury, she tackled Agent 47, disarming him. They grappled on the ground, a whirlwind of fists and kicks. Ava, fueled by adrenaline and love, fought with a ferocity she hadn't known she possessed. Finally, she managed to gain the upper hand. She pinned Agent 47 to the ground, her knife poised above his heart. "It's over," she said, her voice cold and hard. "The agency can't control me anymore." With a swift, decisive movement, she ended his threat, protecting Jed and securing their chance at a future. The ranch was silent once more. Jed rushed to Ava's side, his face etched with concern. He carefully examined her wound, his touch gentle despite his fear. "We need to get you to a doctor," he said, his voice trembling. "No," Ava replied, shaking her head. "There's no time. The agency will send more. We need to disappear." Jed hesitated, but he knew she was right. They couldn't stay at Harmony Ranch. It was no longer safe. They had to leave everything behind and start over. They packed a few essentials, gathered what money they could, and saddled up their horses. As they rode away from the burning ranch, Ava looked back, a tear rolling down her cheek. She was leaving behind her old life, her past, her identity. But she was also riding towards a new future, a future with Jed, a future filled with hope. They rode through the night, their destination unknown, their path uncertain. But they had each other, and that was all that mattered. They were fugitives, outlaws, but they were also free. Free from the agency, free from their past, free to choose their own destiny. The fight was far from over, but for now, they were safe. Weeks turned into months. Ava and Jed traveled from town to town, taking odd jobs to survive. They were always looking over their shoulders, knowing that the agency could be lurking around any corner. One day, while working a small diner in a dusty town, Ava spotted a familiar face. It was one of her former training instructors, a man named Victor. He was sitting at table, watching her intently. Ava knew what this meant. The agency had found them. She signaled to Jed, and they slipped out the back door, grabbing what little belongings they had. They knew they couldn't run forever. They had to confront the agency head-on. They found a secluded cabin in the mountains, a place where they could make their stand. Ava sent a coded message to Ms. Thorne, requesting a meeting. She knew it was a long shot, but she had to try to negotiate a peaceful resolution. She had to convince the agency to let them go, to let them live their lives in peace. She was done running. She was ready to face her past and fight for her future. It was time for a final showdown. Ms. Thorne arrived at the cabin alone, her face as cold and impassive as ever. "I admire your courage, Agent 47, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "But you must understand that defection is not an option. The agency does not allow loose ends." "I'm not an agent anymore," Ava replied, her voice firm. "I'm choosing a new life. I'm asking you to let me go." Ms. Thorne shook her head. "Impossible. You know too much. You're a liability." "Then kill me," Ava challenged. "But leave Jed out of this. He has nothing to do with the agency." Ms. Thorne hesitated, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Very well," she said finally. "I'll make you a deal. You complete one last mission for the agency, and I'll guarantee your freedom. No more assassins, no more threats. Just a clean slate." Ava looked at Jed, her eyes searching his. He nodded, trusting her decision. She knew it was a dangerous gamble, but it was their only hope. She had to take it. "What's the mission?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The game was far from over. The mission was impossible. Miss Thorne wanted Ava to assassinate a high-ranking government official, a man known for his humanitarian work. Ava refused. She wouldn't become a pawn in the agency's twisted game again. "Then you leave me no choice," Miss Thorne said, her voice cold. "Agent 47 will be terminated, and Mr. Strong will suffer the consequences." Ava knew Ms. Thorne was bluffing, but she couldn't risk it. She had to find another way. She and Jed spent days poring over maps, studying the agency's operations, searching for a weakness, a loophole. They discovered a hidden file, a secret project that could expose the agency's illegal activities. It was a dangerous gamble, but it was their only hope. Ava agreed to complete the mission, but only if Ms. Thorne released the file to the public. It was a risky move, but it was worth it. They were fighting for their freedom, for their future, for their chance at a normal life. Together, they would bring the agency down. In the end, Ms. Thorne, cornered by the evidence and facing public exposure, released the file. The agency's secrets were revealed, its operations shut down, its agents brought to justice. Ava and Jed were finally free. They returned to Harmony Ranch, the land scarred but not broken. They rebuilt the house, replanted the fields, and welcomed a new beginning. The ranch became a sanctuary, a symbol of their love and their resilience. Years later, Ava and Jed stood on the porch, watching the sunset. Their children played in the yard, their laughter echoing across the plains. Ava looked at Jed, her heart filled with gratitude. She was no longer an assassin, a weapon, a tool. She was a wife, a mother a woman loved. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion, "for believing in me, for giving me a second chance." Jed smiled, taking her hand. "You saved me, Ava," he said softly. "You gave me a life I never thought possible." They stood together, hand in hand, watching the sun dip below the horizon, their future as bright as the stars above. Their love had conquered all, proving that even a heart forged in darkness could find redemption in the light.